Part 3, on my birthday, my boss's son called me into his office and said, "Here's my surprise for you, you're fired." I left quietly without making a scene. Then told IT to my new husband. WHO just smiled. 4 hours later, panic broke out, 98 missed phone calls. They looked stunned. "You want to supervise him?" One of the board members asked. "I want to educate him. If he's going to stay in this industry, he's going to learn to do it right or not at all." Another long pause. Finally, Gregory nodded. "Done." I walked out of that room with a signed agreement in hand. It wasn't a return to Everland. It was a restructuring of the power dynamic. They needed me. And this time, I was walking in on my terms, with documented authority and legal insulation. They couldn't fire me. They couldn't override me. They couldn't ignore me. And Darren? Well, Darren was about to be my student. A week later, I sent him his first assignment, Module 1, Fundamentals of Project Integrity and Compliance. He didn't reply, but 2 days later, the module was returned, completed, accurate. I sent the next one, and the next, for 6 weeks straight. Every submission came back on time, sometimes with questions. At first, I assumed it was performative, a damage control act to rebuild his image. But slowly, I started noticing a shift. His tone changed. His responses became more thoughtful. In a few cases, he even caught things I hadn't flagged. Was it real, or just a performance? I wasn't sure. Meanwhile, Proofline Project Systems was growing. After the news of my Everland contract broke, 2 more city departments reached out for consultations. I hired Rachel full-time, then an intern, then a software developer to start building the verification tool I had once outlined in that old binder. It was happening, bit by bit. I was building what I had once only imagined, a system that wouldn't just catch mistakes, but prevent them, one that didn't need someone like me to manually verify everything. One that made ethical choices the standard, not the exception. One afternoon, Gregory called. "Jesse, we have a request." "What kind?" "A client wants to know if you'd consider presenting the new project verification process at the Ridgeview Town Hall." I hesitated. "That's a public meeting." "Yes. And you're the one person who can restore trust." Trust. That word again. But I thought about it and realized it wasn't just about Everland anymore. The community had a right to hear from the person making sure this mess didn't happen again. "I'll do it," I said finally, "but only if Darren's there, too." The Ridgeview Town Hall was scheduled for a Wednesday evening in the community center gymnasium. Folding chairs, fluorescent lights, and one long plastic table where Gregory, a city official, and I would sit. It was nothing glamorous, but it might have been the most important meeting of my professional life. I arrived early. The room was already filling up with residents, some angry, some confused, some just curious. These were the people who had trusted Everland Homes to build their futures, their starter homes, their retirements, their children's backyards. And for a while, that trust had been badly misplaced. Gregory arrived next, followed by a staff member from the city's Department of Planning and Zoning. And then, almost exactly at 6:55, Darren walked in. He didn't look like the Darren I remembered, no smug smile, no expensive blazer, no phone glued to his hand. Just a plain blue button-down, sleeves rolled, and a manila folder under one arm. He gave a brief nod in my direction and took a seat in the audience. Interesting. At 7:02 p.m., Gregory stood and addressed the crowd. "I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Tonight is about transparency, about answering your questions and owning our mistakes. That begins with introducing the person who's been rebuilding our project integrity system, Jesse Reyes." I stepped up to the microphone, heart thudding against my ribs. I'd spoken at plenty of meetings in the past, but this wasn't just professional. This was personal. "Good evening," I began. "I know some of you might recognize my name from recent reports. I was a lead project planner at Everland for 5 years. Last month, I discovered that my name had been used without my permission to approve project plans I didn't create. After I brought this to the city's attention, an investigation confirmed multiple compliance violations, many of which affected the Ridgeview development." Murmurs rippled through the room. I continued calmly. "Since then, I've been contracted as an independent integrity consultant to audit and rebuild all processes connected to Ridgeview. What that means is every revised plan, every material order, and every safety compliance check now passes through a new system, one that I control." A woman in the second row raised her hand. "Why should we trust Everland again? Why should we believe anything now?" It was the question I had expected. I nodded. "You shouldn't take anything on faith," I said. "But you can verify. We've created a public dashboard updated weekly with plan approvals, inspection dates, and compliance sign-offs. You'll know exactly what's happening and when." Another hand shot up, then another, questions about soil stability, drainage, electrical planning. I answered each one thoroughly. Not defensive, just factual. And that's when Darren stood. Everyone turned. He walked slowly to the front of the room, glanced at Gregory, then looked directly at me. "May I speak?" he asked. Gregory hesitated. I nodded once. Darren stepped to the mic. "My name is Darren Langford. Many of you know me as the acting director of Everland. Some of you knew my father when he ran this company with integrity. I did not honor that legacy." A beat of silence. I altered project submissions to cut costs. I overrode safety protocols. I used other people's credentials to approve plans that wouldn't have passed inspection. I believed I could manage the fallout. I was wrong. The gym was utterly silent now. I was removed from operations after the investigation, but over the last 6 weeks, I've been retraining under the guidance of Ms. Reyes. Not because anyone forced me to, but because I had to understand how badly I'd failed, and because if this project is ever going to mean something again, it starts with accountability. He turned back to the audience. I know I can't erase what I've done, but I'm committed to fixing it one step at a time. He returned to his seat. No applause, no outbursts, just a heavy, thoughtful silence. After the meeting, a few residents approached me. Some still skeptical, others quietly grateful. One elderly man said, "If you're the one fixing this, I'll sleep better tonight." That meant more than any corporate title I'd ever held. Darren approached just as I was packing up. I meant what I said, he offered. I studied him. Good, because this isn't over. Integrity doesn't happen once. It has to be maintained every step, every day. He nodded. I understand. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Why did you really stand up there? He looked back. Because you were right. Not just about the project, about me. I didn't deserve the position I was given, and I never earned the trust I was handed. But maybe I can earn some back. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because trust, like integrity, is something built, not given. And it was still under construction. 3 months passed. Ridgeview was officially reinstated, this time under strict oversight, weekly public audits, and triple verification systems. Construction resumed slowly, cautiously, under the weight of everything that had nearly gone wrong. But something had changed. Not just the project, not just the company. Me. I was no longer waking up wondering if I'd be blindsided at a morning meeting or have my ideas ignored in favor of someone else's ego. I wasn't just working for someone anymore. I was working on something that mattered. Proofline Project Systems had secured 4 new municipal contracts. My system was being piloted in 2 counties. City officials were recommending it as a benchmark model. I was hiring full-time staff. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't chasing approval. I was setting the standard. One afternoon in early spring, I was invited to speak at a regional architecture and compliance conference. Nothing huge, just a panel discussion about ethics in urban development. I almost said no. But then I thought about the Jessie from a year ago. The one who got fired on her birthday. Who left the office without raising her voice. Who? Final part, on my birthday, my boss's son called me into his office and said, "Here's my surprise for you, you're fired." I left quietly without making a scene. Then told IT to my new husband, WHO just smiled. 4 hours later, panic broke out, 98 missed phone calls. Quietly, she shut the door behind her while everyone else clapped for a man who didn't know half of what she did. And I decided to show up. When I finished my talk, a young woman approached me. Early 20s, anxious but determined. "Hi, I just wanted to say. Your story, what you shared today, it reminded me of something I'm going through. I work under someone who keeps taking credit for my work. I thought maybe that was just the industry." I smiled gently. Number 1, it's not the industry. That's just someone hoping you'll stay quiet. She blinked. "So, what do I do?" I handed her my card. "You document everything. You protect your work and you start building something no one can take from you." She held the card like it was gold. Maybe to her, it was. Back home that evening, Noah grilled dinner while I watched the sun dip behind our newly finished fence. Our fixer-upper had become a haven, a little rough around the edges, but ours. He looked up from the grill. "You know, it's been exactly 6 months since Darren fired you." I laughed softly. "Feels like a lifetime ago." He raised an eyebrow. "If you could go back, would you still walk out the same way?" "No question," I replied. "But this time, I wouldn't wait so long to stand up for myself." He handed me a plate and we sat down on the porch steps. "You didn't just stand up," he said. "You built something stronger than what they destroyed." I paused, taking in his words, then pulled out my phone. There was a message from Gregory. "Jesse, board approved the citywide protocol expansion. We're adopting your system for all projects going forward. Congratulations." Below that, another from Darren. "Completed Module 12. Site team caught a design error today because I flagged it first. Thought you'd want to know." I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I sat in the quiet, listening to the dogs rustling in the yard, the sound of traffic in the distance, the world moving forward, calm, but not still. I thought about everything that had happened. The text on my birthday. The forging of my name. The silence I'd chosen over outrage. The system I built from an old binder. Late nights and a whole lot of bitterness turned into purpose. I didn't burn Everland to the ground, but I rebuilt the ground they stood on my terms, with my tools. And no one could take that away. People ask me sometimes if I ever forgave Darren. The truth? I don't know. Maybe forgiveness isn't always the point. Maybe it's about creating enough distance between the person you were and the person you've become that their power fades on its own. What I do know is this: revenge doesn't always look like scorched earth. Sometimes it looks like leadership. Sometimes it looks like walking back into the room, not to beg for your job, but to rewrite the way the job is done. Sometimes it looks like watching someone learn the lessons they once mocked you for knowing. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. You probably understand something a lot of people overlook, that the greatest revenge is not in making someone pay. It's in making yourself unshakable. It's in using what was meant to destroy you as the foundation for something stronger, more ethical, more respected, and fully your own. So here's to being fired on your birthday, and to becoming the kind of person they have to call back, only to realize you no longer need to answer.